Separate disputes have been bringing rail services on some days to a virtual standstill. Today saw developments in both. 3 strikes across Britain at the signals company Network Rail, which were due in the coming days, have been called off. Meanwhile, there have been talks at ScotRail to try and avert the possibility of regular strikes there in the run-up to Christmas. Well, let's talk to our news correspondent Jamie McIver, who's at Queen Street Station in Glasgow for us. Jamie, just disentangle this for us. How are passengers going to be affected by all this?
Well, in a nutshell, Sally, I'm afraid it's still bad news for anybody who'd been hoping to travel by train tomorrow. The news that the strikes at Network Rail had been suspended came through just before 4 o'clock this afternoon. So it was too late for ScotRail to reorganise its rotas for tomorrow. So it's still basically a skeleton timetable on ScotRail tomorrow. What does that mean? A limited daytime service on a few routes around about Glasgow and Edinburgh. And we're hoping to hear from the company tomorrow or Sunday about just what they plan to run on Monday, when there would also have been a strike at Network Rail. But in the separate dispute at ScotRail itself, the stakes now couldn't be higher. If that dispute isn't resolved, then we'll see regular strikes on Fridays and Saturdays all the way up to Christmas, with the first of those strikes in just over a fortnight. And some in the business community are now becoming very worried.
It's beginning to feel like Christmas. And amid the economic uncertainty, businesses are getting ready. But the prospect of regular weekend train strikes is causing real concern.
Of course it's worrying, because this would be the first time that we would be having a normal Christmas since 2019, before the pandemic. And we're still not fully recovered from the pandemic. We're still only about 80% of the footfall we had back in 2019. So the idea of significant train strike disruption during the lead up to Christmas would be seriously concerning for businesses in the city centre.
Glasgow's economy in particular relies on visitors and shoppers. Many of them rely on the train. The local rail network is the most extensive in the UK outside London. The annual light show in the city's West End has a dinosaur theme this year. It could be part of a day out in the train, and the company behind it is looking for a resolution.
It would be a massive blow to our businesses. Every time there's a rail strike, we see an impact on the venues and on our events. And it's not just for our teams, it's for our customers as well. And it takes people away from wanting to visit, it takes people from wanting to travel.
Getting people into the city centre and elsewhere is hugely important. For some, train disruption means plans being changed.
I'm a student nurse and I'm on placement at the moment, so getting to placement is also going to be more stressful because I take the train to get there as well. So.
The workers need to unionise and go forth with that, and I think if they need to do it, they need to do it. At the same time, there's going to be problems that come with that, and I hope it gets solved.
Just not being able to get about if you don't want to drive, you know. If we get bad weather, how do you get to work? Well, you know, it's not ideal, is it?
The disruption to the railways is about more than disruption for passengers. There's a real worry about the economic damage if strikes continue.
Any sign, Jamie, that ScotRail and the RMT are any closer to resolving this?
Well, certainly, Sally, at the Network Rail dispute, there will now be what's described as an intense period of negotiations. At ScotRail, there were talks today too. No new pay offer was made, but I'm told that the talks were positive and constructive, and more talks will be taking place next week. Now, to remind you, the pay offer to the RMT at the moment is a 5% rise plus an additional £500. But that's still less than the RMT is hoping for, and significantly less than the rate of inflation. I would suggest, though, that either ScotRail or the RMT will have to move their position in some way if the next round of strikes at ScotRail itself is to be avoided. And certainly that wider anxiety in the business community that a way must be found to avoid these strikes, because they're just so worried about the economic damage after so many hard years.
Jamie McIver in Glasgow, thank you.